dog got some stick every time it did something good. Like if it scared off a bird that was persistent, according to Jack, there were a few of those. As if there was something outside that scared them more than a growling Rottweiler. So I figured that the dog got some meat once, maybe twice a week. No, the dog didn't go crazy from tasting meat like a lion does, if that's where you think this story is going. Jack said this dog was a big pushover. Wouldn't even attack one of the birds, just stare him away. Besides, dogs are more loyal than hungry. Now, what did happen was... About mid-May, Jack came down to my shop on a Wednesday. This is odd because people here stick to a pretty regular routine that only changes for very good or very bad reasons. Jack bought a pound of steak. Again, odd because he never bought more than half pound. Then he told me his dog has run away in the night. Jack told me that about how he woke his dog, not only growling, but barking like a maniac. Then he heard scratching on the floor, and it sounded like the dog jumped. Jack got out of bed to see what had happened, and it looked like the dog chased a bird out the window. He saw it running for the tree line, barking, but he couldn't make it anything else out in the darkness of the night. Jack loves that dog to death, spoiled it too, so it was no surprise that he was planning on luring it back with some food. Jack came back the next week, on Thursday, and went about his business as usual. He was being hopeful and optimistic. Jack found the meat gone every day that he had put some out so far, though his dog hadn't come back. He said things like his dog just chased a bird back into the woods and lost its way again. I didn't buy it, though. I thought Jack was being too optimistic. Maybe I should have told him his dog wasn't coming back. But I had bigger issues. Ghost, when I clear my throat, that's time for you to put in your information. No? Okay. In other words, give the thoughts about the story. So far, I have you hooked on this, don't I?
Yeah, like, is the dog gonna come back as a killer dog? Or what? Did he chase the ghost out of the house?
I'm still reading! I'm not going to give you spoilers! I was starting to get less and less meat every week, to sell every week. The farmer I bought most of my selection from was finding a lot of his livestock dead. Cows, pig, horses, even the chickens were found with large bite wounds or missing proportions of their bodies. One even told... He even told me one cow lost its entire lower body. Yeah, explain how the dog did that! A whole entire body. Lower body. Just... Or am I leading you into the wrong direction? You're just gonna have to listen.
Guarantee it's the dog.
He told me, oh, this farmer is named Billy, and he still lived about half a mile away from the crueler farm. He doesn't sell animals anymore, though. Switched to crops after what happened. So Billy told me he got a look at the thing that was killing off all his animals. He said he took a shot at it one night when it was trying to claw its way into his barn. I will never forget the description he gave me, even if I be 100. It was at least 6 feet tall, and had dull gray leathery skin, covered in spikes all down to its back, and its joints like the bones grew out too long and jutted out of the knees, elbows, shoulders, pretty much every other joint. The creepiest part was how Billy described its eyes and mouth. The thing's eyes were two small black tar circles. They had no shine or reflection in them, as though all the light was pulled in. The eyes sat a few inches above its mouth, a large slit that followed the jawline up higher than it stood, and was filled with small, needle-like teeth.
It's good so far. You have me hooked for adventure.
Billy's story spread quickly in this town. There were a lot of mixed feelings about it. On one hand, Billy was known for drinking late into the night and had claimed some more insane things on his drunken students. Us older folks thought he was just hammered and saw something like a wolf or a fox out there. The younger people, though, they believed the story. Billy was an honest guy. Given such details, it seemed the story couldn't be a dream. In the end, it was silently decided that no one should feed into Billy's tale. If only we had done something about it. Went and checked for it outside ourselves. Humored him. Maybe if we did that, everything would have been okay. Ended okay. It was a few more weeks, and then I saw Jack walking out of the pawn shop. This was fairly early before I started my shift, so I went over to say hello. He wasn't looking so good. In fact, Jack was fuming, all red in his face, his cheeks wet with tears. His lower lip looked like it was chewed on for the better part of an hour. I asked him what was the matter, and he choked back a sob that was caught in his throat, and Jack responded, "It's my dog," he said. I found what's left of him. That almost knocked me off my feet. I waited for him to calm down and have him explain what happened. He had apparently been pitting up a finch because animals were turning up dead on his land. Small things like rabbits or field mice. When he got into the back left corner of his property, he found the remains of his animal. There were only bones left, according to Jack, and a few bits of meat here and there. The only reason he knew it was his dog was that the snapped collar on the ground only a few inches away from the body. It looked like the dog had fought something much larger. Jack had figured that it was some kind of wild animal that Billy had seen, and it is what got the dog. I wasn't so convinced, but stupidly, I kept my mouth shut. And then I asked Jack what Jack bought in the pawn shop. He had purchased a shotgun with slugs, solid metal shotgun rounds. He refused to tell me why, but I had a pretty good idea. He was planning on killing whatever it was that got his dog. I couldn't blame him, seeing as how the dog had become his best friend. The only thing to keep him company after a long day of work. No, I didn't blame him, but I thought it was the stupidest idea he could ever have. Now, this might be a small town, but there is still a waiting period after buying a gun. There are backroom checks, and it takes about 3 weeks in all. So it would be a while before Jack got the gun. And I didn't expect to see him back until my Sunday. To my surprise, Jack returned the next day. He got everyone who would listen, which is most of us, to began to recount an encounter he had the night before. He saw Billy's monster and described it in a very dreamlike details. He said that he had fallen asleep on his front porch, as a lot of us did on warm nights, and woke up to the sound of heavy breathing. He opened his eyes, and right there before him stood a monster with dry, pale gray skin, spikes jutting out at its joints and all down its back. Said the thing tried to grab him too. It did have some scratches on his arm, but looked like a fall on rocks could have caused it to. The part that got us were how his details were so descriptive, yet dreamlike, in how there were very few exact details. The details that did exist were so powerful and descriptive. How the monster's breath smelled of rotten flesh and citrus. The way it moved in a sluggish and awkward way, as though it couldn't move without hurting itself. And then the same detail of the mouth and eyes. 2 very small holes, black holes, just about a wide mouth lined with spit and teeth. And then it was agreed that Jack had lost his mind from the loss of his pet. Only a few kids who listened asked to believe Jack saw a monster that night. He was denied his firearm, and the letter went out on Sunday. No one saw Jack on Saturday. No one saw Jack on Sunday at the barn. We assumed he stayed home where the letters, no smiling faces and the drinks kept coming. If only someone had went to check on Jack, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Thursday came. No Jack. That was a bad sign after all. If he didn't buy food, it meant he wasn't eating. People were worried, but none of us said anything. We were stupid. We'd hoped he was just going to suddenly get better and stop being crazy. It took a week for anyone to go down and check up on him. One of his close friends, Jim, went down to check up on Jack. He drove his truck down that cracked road with faded yellow paint till he got to the farmhouse. The gray paint looked new then. The barley in the back still golden and shining in the mid-noon sun. The gate-out fence was still unfinished, so he climbed over it easily. He walked up to the blue door and thumped the knocker against the cool wood 3 times. No response. He tried again, faster and in more panic. 3 quick thumps on the thick wood. When he didn't answer, Jim was concerned and planned on going to town to get the authorities. But he took one last look at the house and noticed the bedroom window open. Jim called a few times, relieved that Jack was most likely sleeping off his troubles again. He didn't get a response after shouting, so he pulled the ladder out of his truck and leaned it against the house. The first Jim said that hit him was the smell. A terrible stench, something akin to roadkill marinated in vomit for a week. Hard to stand something so terrible. He said he was about to climb back down and throw up all over the ground when he saw Jack. He was lying on his bed, just as Jim had figured, but he wasn't asleep. He was dead, and worse, he was mutilated. One arm was chewed down to the bone. The skin on his chest ripped off, and his ribcage crushed. Both of his legs were missing a serious portion of muscle. His skull was exposed, one eye missing, and his scalp gone. His abdomen had been ripped open into as well, the smell coming from bits of meat and organs soaking in Jack's bile. Jim vomited all over the floor. I suppose it goes without saying that no one saw Jack again. The funeral was closed casket, and it was a very solemn day. No one wanted to bring up Billy's monster, but everyone must have been thinking it. Then a young girl, must have been around 8, loudly asked her mother if the monster ate up Mr. Cruller. There was a collective shudder between all in attendance. The mother had been trying to explain to the daughter she couldn't just say things. Then a boy, only a few years older, piped up and shouted that the carnivore is what killed Jack. Carnivore was the name that Billy's monster was given, and it stuck. It was impossible for anyone to forget about the carnivore after that. Like I said, spawned an urban legend. Now, you can take the story as true like all of us do, or you can just take it as a good horror tale. No skin off my back either way. However, show some respect to the locals around here. They take it very seriously. It's like a boogeyman to us. It's the reason the kids don't go out alone after dark. If anything is found dead and eaten, no matter how big it is, it's blamed on the carnivore. No one sleeps with the windows open anymore. Oh, look at the time. I have to get out of here. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your night. One last thing. I don't suggest driving up to that old gray farmhouse a good ways up the road. It's still there with its dead crops and its unfinished great gate. But the area has a lot of dead animals that turn up dead at this hour of night. That took forever. I'm gonna save what I caught. What?